Hi and welcome back to a new video. We will finally build a system inside the Lian O11 Dynamic Evo. This build is also a build for Lian giveaway, which means that the giveaway was also organized by Lian, but there is a link in the description where you can participate in the giveaway. It's over Gleam, but feel free to participate. I would be very happy if one of you out there wins this system in the end. It's a worldwide giveaway, so feel free to participate. Prior to the giveaway, there was also the possibility to vote for the orientation of the build, for the color of the case, type of fans and all these kind of things. Those were already pre-selected and I will just follow the selection. The highlight inside the system, apart from the fact that we're obviously using the O11 Dynamic Evo, which is also a great highlight, but we will have an RTX 3080 inside from ASUS, Strix. ASUS, thank you very much for providing the card for the giveaway. And we will do a non-car overclocking build using the i5 12600. We already proved right at the beginning when non-car kind of came available with a 12400 when it was non-K overclocked versus a 12900K stock, that the 12400 in combination with a 3080 Ti can actually beat a 12900K. So that should be a very performant combination with the 12600. The reason why I chose these combinations is also because I want to use these components and the system I'm building for a separate video, because there's some rumors going on. Apparently somebody's trying to block non-K overclocking and there are some things I want to test, and I will use that with the same system using the B660F gaming Wi-Fi. We will start preparing our mainboard bundle. Already placed the 12600 inside the socket. Closing this. The memory kit which we will be using is a 32GB Dominator Platinum RGB. As always, because this is also a sample provided from Corsair for the build, as always you can find transparent information in the description. So just scroll down right at the bottom of the description, you will find what kind of samples were used in the video or what kind of part of the video is paid, for example. You can always find this information on my video, just side note. And also it's a 5600 C36 kit. And that's finally getting in the right direction. If we compare this with a kit from like the early days of DDR5, where it also makes sense to use DDR5 over DDR4. We also received an MP600 1TB. I already removed the stock heatsink, even though I guess cooling wise, this might even be the better option. I'm not quite sure, judging by the weight. I think this is a bit heavier. So yeah, cooling wise might not make any kind of difference, but using the stock heatsink, just putting this on there, even though I already dismantled it, but you can see, because everything in the back will just stand out, I guess. Yeah, using the ASUS cover from the mainboard just will be visually much more appealing. And with the MP600, it also makes sense to remove the protective film from the thermal pad, because some SSDs, if they have no components on the back, they're too flat and they will not stick to the thermal pad. But with this one, you can see if you just press it down, even without closing this, it's already in place. Now closing this, but yeah, this way with the MP600 or different SSDs which also have components on the back, then you will have the best thermal contact to this like backside cooling. I decided to purchase a 360 DRGB AiO from EK for this build. I personally never tried this before, that's why I thought it would be a good coincidence to also try this AiO for me personally the first time. Obviously I read reviews about this in the past, but never tried it personally, and that's why I just wanted to give it a try. We will not use the EK fans though. I decided to go with the AL120 Unifan from Lian, simply because this is so much cleaner, so much nicer to use. There are no RGB cables on every single fan. You can daisy chain them, just have the cable on one fan. So much easier, so much more convenient to use and so much cleaner. AiO finally prepared, ready to go, which means we can start with preparation of the case. Pretty sure most of you are familiar with the O11 Dynamic Evo and the ways you can customize the case, for example. I mean, the most obvious way would be vertical GPU kit. I guess that's the most common. Then you can change the I/O position from the feed to the top I/O. That's why we have the additional I/O and top I/O kit. And also the front mesh kit, which means that we will replace the front glass panel typically. I already removed the side tempered glass and the front tempered glass panel. That's easier for me for filming purposes. But the front tempered glass panel will eventually also be replaced with the mesh kit. That is just for additional airflow. This is the additional I/O kit I was just talking about, and it will depend on your mainboard if you can actually use two of them, because one is obviously included right at the bottom here. And you can add a second one, for example, with the top I/O. And that's what we will do today, which means we will replace this one with this one. So that's the stock one. You can slide to the back, take it off, and you will notice it's the same type of bracket, and it will be replaced with this one. But prior to the replacement, we will use the additional I/O and remove the internals, and the internals will be attached to here. And this would be the result after you changed to top I/O. I also already added the Corsair RM850 PSU, should be sufficient for today's system with the 12600. As you can see, I'm making some quite good progress on the build. Mainboard is already in place. I already mounted the PSU, already routed all the cables, also the data cables towards the mainboard. And I'm now working on the fans and the fan configuration. One word on that, I just want to give you a hint for the best possible cooling configuration. First of all, the bottom fans should always be configured as intake fans, the way they are now pointing upwards. If you have side fans, they should also be configured as intake fans. And on the rear, this should be configured as outtake, as exhaust fan. Fans mounted in top, typically if you have an AiO or radiator in there, should always be as exhaust. And if you are using a front mesh panel, then those should also be configured as intake fans. That's, at least thermally speaking, the best configuration you can have if you have an air-cooled GPU and typically an AiO-cooled or custom-cooled CPU. Also some quick advice, if you have never built a system inside O11 Dynamic Evo or the original O11 Dynamic, if you plan to have a radiator in the bottom, it will potentially block the access to the connectors in the bottom of the mainboard. That's an obvious thing and also kind of trade-off. I personally kind of also like this feature because you're blocking all the cables you don't want to see. But it also brings with it that you have to think about what kind of connections you will need prior to the radiator installation. So if you have any kind of additional fan controllers like a Corsair Commander or whatever, you always have to connect everything and also RGB first before installing the radiator. Just keep that in mind. Maybe it's escalating a little bit when it comes to the fans, because you also have to keep in mind the top fans of the AiO are still missing. That will be the next step, mounting the EK AiO. Using the Lian D fans is always extremely convenient because you can always daisy chain up to 4 of these fans. I think most of you are familiar with that by now. And then you can connect up to 16 fans on the Lian D controller. This is the cable you use for connecting the fans, up to 4 fans with a single controller, which means that all the cable management is so much easier than having a single RGB cable and the fan cable on each of these fans. Yeah, because that would look like a mess on the backside, which it probably still does, but let's not talk about that. I just started peeling off the protective film from the mainboard and it just removed the entire part. I hate these protective films. They are so damn annoying every single time. Like, why do they keep using so many of these? The next step would be mounting the vertical GPU bracket and also the GPU. That's always what I reserve as the last step, because otherwise often you cannot even use the vertical GPU bracket before that because you block everything else, like access to the fans and to connectors and stuff. That's why I always keep this as the last step if possible. Also, one more thing I wanted to talk about is something that keeps annoying me or has been annoying me for years, that we don't have any standards in this industry, and the manufacturers, for whatever reason, are incompetent when it comes to this. All of them, like mainboard manufacturers and AiO manufacturers, because these days, if you have any kind of mid-range to high-class systems, most of them use AiOs. And most of these AiOs have connectors on them, like a fan connector, maybe an RGB connector, and a power connector. It would be such an obvious thing that you would have the same connector on all of them, and then maybe you could have a connector right next to the socket where you could plug your AiO into. Because otherwise, like in this system, like in any other system, you have the cable exiting the AiO right on the side, and then you have to route your cable all the way like through the VRM cooling and all that, and it always looks crap. There is no way to make it look nice. It always, to some degree, looks crap. Yeah. Maybe in like 10 years, never lose hope. I don't have much hope left because looking at everything that's kind of RGB, there are like no standards in this industry, which is really annoying. It's so obvious that, I mean, it would be so simple to define certain standards for certain applications, but they are just not competent enough, all of them, to talk to each other, because everybody thinks they have the best solution and none of them has the best solution. That's the funny part. But let's continue with the build. 99% done with the system, very satisfied with the result. The only thing I still have to work on, apart from the cable management in the back, is, and you can already see that there is already a screw on the side in the graphics card, I will use our laser cutter to create an acrylic piece which I can put like underneath the GPU, so it will be 100% straight, because right now it's sagging a little bit. It's not too bad, but yeah, it could be better. Yeah, visually it could be better. Technically it should be fine this way, but I just want to have it 100% perfect. That's why I also have to still do the cable management, install Windows and all these kind of things. I have to say, very satisfied with the result, and those Lian Li fans and this huge amount of Lian Li fans just looks absolutely incredible. Also, the cooling configuration is very good, because all these fans on the bottom blowing directly air into the card. It's like the same kind of vents available from the backside. So the idle temperature of the card is extremely nice. Talking about the fans, I mean, we have a massive amount of fans, which typically causes a bit more noise, but all of them are fixed at 800 RPM. So you can probably not hear anything, and that's because it's very quiet. Only the fans in the AiO I fixed to 1000 RPM, which is slightly higher, but still not really possible to hear, but it will lead to better temperatures on the CPU. At the same time, it's still only a 12600, like non-K, and it's not a 12900K, so the temperatures are really good. As you can see, I already did an R20 multi and also single, because I mean, ain't nobody got time for that on the single, but 722 points is a very good result. Same goes for multi, because that's almost the score which you can achieve with a 5800X, which is absolutely amazing, considering that the CPU has 2 cores less. But let's just repeat R20 multi for temperatures. And as you can see, R20 almost passed, but we are in the region of max like 76, 77 degrees Celsius, which is absolutely great, considering that R20 is typically one of the highest power consumptions you can have in most of the benches. Let's leave Prime 95 small FFTs aside maybe, but compare it to any kind of gaming load, I would expect temperatures around maybe like 55 or 60 degrees Celsius peak. And that's what I wanted to highlight previously, talking about the GPU, because it's like working semi-passive, 32 degrees Celsius in idle, because of the fans sitting underneath. Very good temperature. The last thing I'm quickly going to test is a times by extreme benchmark, simply to check if everything is in line when it comes to 3D performance, and also check GPU temperatures under load. 8150 points, that's exactly what I expected, and it's also getting a little bit lowered by the CPU score, which is obvious because the CPU does not have the amount of cores you could theoretically use with a 3D Mark, let's say with a 12900K, which has a lot more cores with the E-cores and everything. But a graphics score with 9000 points is absolutely in line, that's what matters. Looking at the GPU itself, peak 64 on the GPU itself, hotspot 77, memory 78, so that's perfectly in line, perfectly what was expected. Again, checking max CPU temperature between 70 and 75 during the 3D Mark. I am very happy with the result. I think those fans, yeah, even with a high amount of fans, which is something I typically don't do, but for this type of build, I think it looks amazing. And locked at 800 RPM, cannot really hear anything, which is great. Thermals are great, performance is great. And if you are wondering, because I didn't do a huge amount of like stability tests, which is something I would certainly do if I would send it out to like a winner, for example. But that's something I still want to do because I want to do a separate video with the system when I want to test a lot more regarding non-K overclocking, Intel blocking, AVX512 and all these kind of things. That's something I want to do. If you did not participate in the giveaway so far, make sure you try your luck and maybe somebody of you wins it. I would be very happy about that. And I wish you all the best of luck. And next time I can guarantee you we will do the typical giveaway the way I do it over Google Forms, because as I said before, this is over Lian, which is using Gleam. It's not the best solution, but it's okay. All right. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Bye bye.